It's Polo. Meanz in the building. I remember saying one day, life sucks. I remember being 14 and locked up. I remember rolling and smoking my first blunt. I remember telling myself this the life I want. I remember the day Ricky died. I remember being by my grandma's side. I remember both funerals. I remember being high. I remember looking up. I remember asking why. I remember screaming out it just wasn't their fucking time. I remember telling my stepdad I will kill you. I remember Bree waking up saying, Nick, is that you? I remember being high without going to high school. I remember mama screaming, no, Nick, not you. I remember Corpus Christi. I remember grave sites. I remember this is where I learned about that gang life. I remember the same day I'm out there working, earning stripes. I remember being told it's that shit that they don't like. I remember when I had to turn the fucking page. I remember being left out in the pouring rain. I remember the day I started to go insane. I remember till I die, it's family over everything.
I remember everything, I remember it all. I remember the pox and I remember the smalls. I remember my highs and I remember my flaws. I remember when my back was up against the wall.
I remember when I had it figured out. I remember when I almost got kicked out my house. I remember the first time I thought about what the view would be like if I just applied myself. It's been a hard trip and a long road. My feet hurt, but I remember I'm an old soul. I remember OG and Polo, the ones around me when it's dark, I'm never dolo. I remember telling myself that I gotta chill, sweating profusely after I pop that pill, time stand still, wondering if this what they feel. When you do it for the thrills, maybe I'm thinking too much because I'm addicted to it still. I remember why I'm barely stressing. I remember why I decided to go and take a different direction when I had the chance to make stacks. I remember failing but learning. If you work hard, you could change that for real. I put that on a milli. I remember pissing in the cup just so they won't get me judged. Looking in my face, hoping he won't put a sentence in me. I remember this was a lesson I was destined to meet.
I remember everything, I remember it all. I remember the pox and I remember the smalls. I remember my highs and I remember my flaws. I remember when my back was up against the wall.
I remember everything, I remember it all. I remember the pox and I remember the smalls. I remember my highs and I remember my flaws. I remember when my back was up against the wall.
I remember when you said you loved me. I remember when you wasn't there to hug me. Then I gave these girls my loving. Well, it wasn't really loving, I was just giving them stuffing. No Thanksgiving, but we celebrating something. No fucks given, and I'm still fucking something. I remember getting Swayze, then I can't remember nothing. Then I remember waking up at the 7-Eleven thinking to God, thank you, I've yet to meet you in heaven. As I'm getting arrested and as I'm trying to count my blessings while my faith is being tested and I miss my test date. I remember my mother crying on the phone. I remember all the scholarships that I've blown. I remember when I started feeling like a grown man snapping at anybody, anywhere, and I ain't need a kickstand. I remember 33rd all too well. I remember dominoes and spades and all them cells. I remember borrowing your girl and giving her back. I remember stealing merch even when I had a stack. I remember when I carried work up in my backpack, and I'll remember all of that even when it faced the black.
I remember everything, I remember it all. I remember the pox and I remember the smalls. I remember my highs and I remember my flaws. I remember when my back was up against the wall.
I remember everything, I remember it all. I remember the pox and I remember the smalls. I remember my highs and I remember my flaws. I remember when my back was up against the wall.